we are up to our last Gripset live for the year. Good to have you on board. Numbers starting to come through. Thanks for joining. We've got people coming through on Facebook and YouTube. Great to see you, Instagram. Good to see you as well. Instagram is coming through, I believe. Well, I can't see their questions at the moment. Where have we got? Well, they're flying in on Facebook and YouTube tonight. Instagram working from your end? Good to see you all, guys. We are talking about surfaces and substrates. So we'll just give a few minutes for more to come through. Hope you've been well. And wow, what a year, hey? We're now at the point where we've had second lockdowns. SA had a bit of an issue, but the biggest plus, I think, has been that construction's going strong around the country. So great to see, and I'm sure many of the waterproofers are doing well out there and coming up to that crazy time of the year, the busy time of the year. So just checking if Instagram is going. Excuse me there, guys. We've just got a few technical issues. Okay, we are. I'm now live on Instagram. There we go. That's better. Yeah. So how are we doing? So surfaces and substrates. We had a few questions come through on this one after we did our Suited for Good episode the other week. Good to see you all, guys. Thanks for joining in Instagram land and YouTube and Facebook land. So, guys, throw the questions my way. I'm on my own tonight. Shandy is not here, but hey, we are going to now, open up the line. I've got a giveaway at the end of the night, which you don't want to miss out. That's a great one. But let's get these questions and comments flying through on surfaces and substrates. So if anything came up from that Suited for Good program, please push them through our way. We can get the conversation going. But one of the common ones that came up where I had questions come through in comments was the piece about Blueboard. How are we going, guys? Good to see you. FA Tiling, thank you. Karen Donors Building, good to see you. Neptune Waterproofing, how you going, guys? I'd like to know, a show of hands, how many of you guys have actually, g'day Kevin, how many of you have actually been asked to waterproof on Blueboard and to tile on Blueboard? Now, I've seen some crazy ones over the years. Seen some builders actually build planter boxes and water features out of Blueboard, which is quite frightening. Excellent waterproofing. How you going, guys? This comes back to the point about just following the manufacturer's instructions. So the questions came through saying, Phil, are you crazy? Like every day of the week, there's a site where a builder wants you to waterproof over Blueboard. If you look at what Blueboard is designed for and what the manufacturers recommend it for, it's primarily for a base for textured coatings and textured surfaces. Yet we over-engineer it, over-specify it, and it gets applied into areas where they're mud cake consultancy. How are you? And you are confronted with thinking that it's the right thing to do. It's the normal thing to do. You've seen it before. It's in a lot of surfaces, but it actually shouldn't be fully waterproofed externally with a tile finish applied over it. So when we think about all those incidents, when I got those comments that came through and those that sort of just passed them by to our sales team and our tech services team, I was flabbergasted that how many jobs out there daily must be happening that aren't right. And it's almost going back to the point of what we said many times gone by, where timber sheeting was used externally as a flooring, and that's not right either. So this is where I've got more guys joining here. Top Cut Tiling, how are you? Top Cut Boxland Property Group, how are you guys? So yeah, Blueboard. If you've had those experiences, I'd like to hear what your conversations have been with your clients. And it's not even about what primer system works best, how to prepare it. It's not recommended. It's not a recommended substrate for waterproofing over. Hence, important that when you see that, educate your client. So if you're the waterproofer and or tiler, explain to your builder. We've had guys asking us, hey, you know, we can use your sheet. It'll overcome all the indifferences. Now, yeah, potentially it would. But the issue is we're still then acknowledging that we're putting a membrane on a surface where the manufacturer of that surface doesn't recommend it be tiled over. Simon the Tiler, how are you? Silicon Man Waterproofing Joint, how you going, guys? Good to see you. I keep seeing numbers come through on YouTube and Facebook, guys, but your names don't come up, unfortunately, so I can't say hi as I am doing on Instagram land. But this part here is where we need to understand. Jesse, how you going? So what are the conversations you are having with your builder? And this is the part for them to ensure they get it right, because those manufacturers like Hardy's and CSR and BGC and Boral, they've all got systems that they recommend, but it's got to be the right system to do that. So remember, you're liable if you start to waterproof over one of those surfaces and you've got no comeback on it. We've even seen things like stack stone get bonded to it. Now, you know, some of the weights of the stack stone tiling is that in itself needs to be an application for tiling that needs to be done schmick in the right way, and yet those applications on Blueboard don't suit. We've got there 1-800 find us, and Stavros, how you going? Cronin Co tiling. Lots of faces on Instagram tonight. Thanks, guys, for joining. So yeah, if that's happening, guys, address it. Like I said before, we've seen things like planter boxes and water features and fish ponds wanting to be built out of these surfaces, and that's just not what it's designed for. So you really are exposing yourself in that situation. It's a straight out no. And if you find a waterproofing manufacturer that's going to give you a specification for that, be aware that you want to make sure that they are going to take liability on anything happens with the Blueboard failure, because you're not covered by the manufacturer of the Blueboard. That's a substrate. You're always going to go back to the base substrate. Brian Tiles has joined. Duffy's joined. How are we going, guys? The other one that came through, which, you know, it's crazy that we hear this, and we didn't bring it up on the Sealed for Good, but someone had inquired about plasterboard in a bathroom that Johnny Blaze, how are you going? Good to see you. Stephen Scriggins came through and said that they have got a builder that told them that if they're going to waterproof with a sheet membrane on plasterboard that's not wet area grade, that would be okay, because a sheet membrane would take the place of wet area plasterboard. Terry the Tyler's joined. How are you going, guys? Efficiency Australia. McFarlane, Glenn McFarlane looks like is there. How are you? Guys, that is crazy. Wet area plasterboard is why it's been designed, for a couple specific reasons. Standard plasterboard is not that you could be using a sheet system like BRW, PF over the top of it and expect that you don't, you can get away without using wet area plasterboard. Villa board is one. There's cement sheet services in wet areas, but plasterboard, if it's not wet area grade plasterboard and it's in a wet area, then it's wrong, and you are running the risk of even accepting that. Now, it's not a runaway. Before you run away from those situations, tell your client it's wrong. If they don't realise it, then run away. But, or they don't want to listen to you. But it's important that you do not accept that substrate. Even with our system, it comes back exactly what I said with Blueboard. You go and put your membrane over that substrate and you own it, and you have no comeback if there's a problem, because the manufacturer will say that this is not meant to be in this room. End of story. It doesn't matter how good the membrane is. So that is not what you can do. We've got here Mr. Membrane Waterproofing. How are you? And the slime spot. So, question here from George. Hey, George, I think no plaster at all should be used in wet areas, even AquaCheck. Well, look, George, a lot of people don't want or don't like plasterboard in wet areas, and there's various reasons for that, and hence why cement sheet has been such a big product as wet area linings over the last 20 years in Australia. However, there are some really good products out there that are able to be used in those situations. And if that's the case and they comply, then you can't not accept it. But opinion agreed with. Engage engineering company, accept the substrate as is, you inherit the problems. Definitely that is the case. Is wet area plasterboard okay in the shower research? Kevin's asked that question. Pretty similar to what George said. His opinion is it shouldn't be used, and many believe that. How you going, luxury sport? Luxury spot, I should say. However, wet area plasterboard, if the manual states it can be used, then you can use it. However, it must be waterproof. Now, got some photos that I'm going to remind our tech department and marketing team to put up of some horrific examples of what builders are doing to cut corners around the country, particularly in the volume area. There's so many waves on Instagram. How you going, guys? Thanks for joining. But the issue is in terms of where they just go and sort of paint over the nail holes, put it in the corner, not doing the whole wall area. It is crazy. When I laugh at these photos because the time taken to just cover those spots instead of rolling out the membrane on the whole wall is crazy. And some of the prices I'm seeing that these guys are paying, you need to educate your builder guys. Whether it's Blueboard, Plasterboard, AquaCheck, it doesn't really matter. It should always be waterproofed. Best process, best practice. Bali bathrooms, how are you? So wet area plasterboard is really only meant for wet area room, not in the actual shower. Well, Bali, I don't have that manual in front of me, but I dare say that if you check out with those manufacturers of plasterboard for wet areas, they will be able to be used and waterproofed. Tim Christopher's joining. Hey, Tim, thanks for coming on board. And we've got lots on YouTube tonight. Fantastic, guys. And I'm seeing the Facebookers now. Tim said that wet area plasterboard has a lower weight carrying limit. So valid point. So if you've got a large format tile or heavy format tile, that may be something that's a disadvantage over things like cement sheeting. But good point, Tim. And also what's a really important point on that though, whether that lining has a higher or lower weight carrying limit, what does the membrane enable? And really important. And that comes up sometimes in my questions when people want highly flexible membranes, because a highly flexible membrane is often a softer membrane and less weight loading ability as well. We might have that conversation another time on a Sealed for Good next year and a live, but that's an important piece to remember. But really good point to hear. So again, guys, it's good to hear this feedback about plasterboard. Everyone's got their preference. Cement sheet, yeah, I prefer it as well. However, seeing lots of good plasterboard applications being put out there, and wet area plasterboard, if waterproofed correctly with a good membrane system, it can obviously stand up to it and doesn't impact the warranty. If it's a wet area substrate, an approved wet area substrate, it's good to go. How are we going, all those guys on Instagram? Good to see you all joining. Lots of waves coming through. Thank you. Now, the other thing that I wanted to make sure is when we talked about that, just touching on those points about plasterboard or Blueboard, which we've discussed for external, really be certain about what those manufacturers' recommendations are on how you actually fix over them and apply over them. Now, the easiest thing with those surfaces, going back to Blueboard, which we talk about, I mentioned Hardy's quite a bit because I like the way they have a visual manual. Their decking manual is fantastic with scone and cement sheet. When you look at it, you see drawings that talk about membranes and tiling over. When you get the Blueboard manual, if there's no drawings or mention of it, then the penny should drop and you got to understand that, hey, maybe I shouldn't be using this product or should be waterproofing over this product. And these are really good conversations to have with builders, guys. It's so important because some builders just don't understand. And like I said before, they'll come to you if you are the expert in your field. They'll rely upon you and take value from what you're doing. And if they don't believe you, tell them to check it out with us and we can reconfirm for you. but you can't be seen to be doing the wrong thing when you're giving the right advice out. People don't want to agree with you for the fact of wanting to be stubborn or trying to take it on the cheap. Then ensure that you don't end up being caught into that case that could come up later. Now, I'm going to give you a really good example of a situation that happened in Melbourne a couple of months ago, and I was horrified by this discussion I had with a contractor, and he was trying to justify with me, excuse me, I'm just going to have a glass of water, that the Sky-On sheeting that being applied down on a balcony had no sealant in it, or the cement sheet system, as per Hardie's recommendation. And his argument to me was that the builder pays the chippy peanuts and won't pay for them to do that. And so wanted something from us to have a system that could go over those joints that hadn't been sealed and essentially hadn't been fixed to Hardie's manual. Now, as soon as you accept that, you are taking a shortcut, because rest assured that if there is an issue with that and that membrane comes up and they pull in all the different touch points, suppliers, the manufacturer, who sold it, who laid it, who told over it, Hardie's in that situation will say our manual shows a sealant bead or whatever that fixing detail is, and if it's not there, they'll walk away, and rightly so. They've got no need to justify why the problem could have occurred when it's not their issue. They've got a manual, they've got a fixing detail, follow it. Now, for a waterproofing contractor to come back and trying to justify why that hasn't been done properly is absolute madness. Total crazy. That's the world you don't want to live in, because you are then trying to already justify to a manufacturer and the tiler and the builder that it's all okay. You coming back to us saying, what's your system to supersede what Hardie's recommendation is? We're a waterproofing manufacturer and we give you a specification to give you a long-term warranty. But at the end of the day, the assumption is that those systems are applied on surfaces that have been fixed to those manufacturers' requirements and to the building code. And, we've been talking about this all year, and those of you joining obviously want to ensure that, the right details are followed. Don't take the risk. If the substrate and the surface is not right to start with, you really have a problem with what you can actually waterproof. And then that discussion is, well, I can't warrant the waterproofing, but you're accepting the surface. So get that right. In those situations, recommend that it gets fixed, or they pay you to do the additional work. Pay you. Don't do it for free, because it needs to be fixed and needs to be done properly. And then they get it done properly the next time, or they tell their trade or who's fixing it. Now, if they kick you off the site because, hey, you're not going to accept it, and you just, in their eyes, you're complaining, then it tells you who that client is you're dealing with, and do you really want to be involved in that, because they're the jobs that come back to haunt you later on. Any other questions, guys, come through? The other one that came through from our Seal for Good program the other week was additives, which this is a really good one. Someone brought up Zypex and those sorts of additives in concrete for concrete roofs, and waterproofing a concrete roof with a liquid system or a sheet. And I recall many, many years ago when we first started out in the Sydney market, I think it was, pre-Elasto days, I think it was 1999, 2000. Large job in Sydney, and we couldn't work out why all this membrane in certain areas was coming up. It just was peeling up off the surface. When we investigated, the membrane came up. There were some areas where, when the membrane was coming up, it had the concrete substrate underneath it. I thought it was just, some sort of weakness in the top surface. But what it was that some of these additives that, when the concrete's poured, and depends on the conditions, made the top layer slightly weak. Now, all that needed to do was be checked before it was applied, before the membrane was applied and primed. And that's part of the surface preparation piece. A chip hammer or a key or a tapping test, just to hear firstly that drumminess. And secondly, hey, Kabat, good to see you, mate. And Nook Constructions, how you going? Patio Coast and Abu, thanks for joining. But on that concrete substrate, if you do that tap test, or you get a key in there, or you get a Ryan, how you going? Or you get a tool to check the integrity of the concrete substrate. If it's weak, you've got to grind it back, prepare, prime, get it to a position where you can waterproof on top of. Just a thing that's concrete. And this is what the contractor said. He said it was concrete, the primer primed okay, it looked all right, and they went and put their waterproofing on top, and this thing, it just peeled off in layers. And that whole piece could have been avoided. Now, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and you can learn about those situations by these stories. But we brought up Blueboard, Plasterboard, and concrete. No surface is safe from not being checked. It's just a part of the way that you approach any job in waterproofing life. And anything that's going on top of that substrate needs to ensure the surface has been correctly applied. All tiles. How are you going, guys? Any more questions on substrates and surfaces, guys? Please push them through. Now, the other one, which was reinforced, someone said to me they liked the fact how in our previous videos I said there was 3 key things to getting waterproofing jobs done properly: surface preparation, and surface preparation. We reinforce that. The guys have done gap courses with us this year, have seen how important that is to our application. You can't underestimate it. And like I said, don't, for the time it takes to check out your surface and then get the surface preparation right, everything goes smoothly from there. If it means that you've got to add an additional cost to your job to make sure that's there, but that is a sign of a really good waterproofer and someone who knows what he's doing. Got Stefan here that said definitely no plasterboard in a wet area. So it looks like the general consensus is not many people like plasterboard in wet areas, particularly wet area plasterboard, I'm assuming, Stefan, if that's the case. But if that's there, then yeah. But what do you do if your builder's used it? If the builder's used it and he's compliant in his construction of that wet area, then at the end of the day, you've got to follow the instruction, check out what those details are on who that manufacturer may be, and then ensure that you are following that part correctly, and then the waterproofing system specification that you're using. Hoxland Property Group, how are you? My tile has an issue with screeding on solvent-based polyurethane membrane. Says that screed will move and tiles pop. Thoughts? I am loving this question, Hoxland. I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm guessing you might be from New South Wales or the Eastern Seaboard. So you've picked a favourite of mine. We're going to open up a can of worms now. PU membranes, solvent-based PU membranes, you cannot bond any cementitious system to it, full stop. Now, any manufacturer that's telling you that you can, please get it in writing, and then please send it to me personally. I want to see it. And I'm talking about all the big manufacturers. Now, I'm not here to bag any solvent-based PU membrane. My personal opinion is, and we've got the ability to make these products, but we don't for wet areas, for the simple fact, 2 reasons. One, they're solvent, but secondly, a system has to have the ability to bond to it. Now, screeds won't bond directly to a PU membrane. They won't bond directly to an MS membrane. But you can, from what I believe now is in the marketplace and what's recommended, is that you apply a slip sheet over the top of the PU membrane. So it's what we call a floating screed, and you reinforce that screed. But you cannot bond. Don't try it. Doesn't matter what the bonding agent is, it won't work. So how do you make your screed stick to the PU? Great question, all tiles. You don't, and you can't. Now, I can tell you from our experience with New Zealand market, and I highlight New Zealand often because of the brands system over there, there are no solvent-based PU membranes on the brands register for wet areas. And the simple reason, which we've gone through with them many years ago, is that if you cannot bond to the PU, no membrane is brands appraised if you can't bond directly to it with a cementitious system. All tiles are saying usually epoxy prime, then use that tile glue, then use tile glue. I can tell you from our laboratory, and we test many, you can't. There is no magic wand, there's no magic bullet on how you can bond directly to a PU membrane. Now, if you would like us to show you a video segment on this, then I'll show it to you. Because with little force, I can pull a screed off a PU membrane. And that's even a reinforced screed with additives. Slip sheet acts like a decoupling. You don't have a bond to the membrane with your screed, and then the screed must be reinforced. It won't bond. You get your tiles to bond to that, but you are compromising the adhesion of the screed to the membrane because it won't bond, and then it may or may not crack, but they can create other issues. The slip sheets are used, sand broadcast, stenogram, it's a no. Bostik PU says to use their primer before tiling on their product. Okay, get the warranty on that one. Okay, but I can tell you right now, as I said, and I'm not, Bostik got a great PU product, but it's horses for courses. The general practice is not a sand casting. Sand casting a membrane actually weakens the membrane because you create a penetration, the sand sinks into the membrane, and when you put that under the microscope, it is penetrated. Now, Johnny has said that sand seed is what they get away with. Sand seed is a thought process, but I can tell you, John, it's still, and we'll do that video for you, you will still remove it. It's the nature of the polyurethane and moisture-cured PU with the isocyanates and the plasticizers that you can't get adhesion. Now, I'll tell you something that is where I sit on this one. I'm a big fan of the big companies like Ardex and Mapei, particularly with their cementitious systems globally. And I've been fortunate to spend time in Europe and seen how some of these products are tested and applied. You don't see the large companies offering systems to lay their cement. These are the global giants and the global leaders in cementitious systems bonding to a solvent-based product that they even have in their range. Now, they've got everything to gain to do that because they could sell it as a system, but the direct bonding of those screeds and tile adhesives on their membranes are not solvent-based PUs. So take note of it and get it in writing. It might be one thing that says you can prime over their product, but priming over that PU membrane, all tiles, is that a system that's warranted? Because the primer then may bond to the PU, but then you are not essentially bonding directly to the PU. Now you're going to go to all that trouble when Bostik have got some good water-based systems that they could bond their tiles directly to or screeds to. Hence, that's our method. You know, there are times where we use a decoupling system, and our express lay there is a key one. Thanks all tiles, I appreciate that. So express lay is a decoupling system. But that's really what your floating screed is. If you put a sheet of plastic or a floating screed on a PU system, then you're not going to have that separation, but you must have that screed reinforced. Really important. Bali bathrooms. I did my Cert 3 in 2006, and PU was unstickable back then. 14 years later, nothing's changed. I rest my case. It's got nothing to do with the technology of the PU. The PU membranes pass 4858, 4658 can do all that. The issue is they have the inability to bond to it, and MS membranes. They may be coming out in the market. Thanks for that reinforcement all tiles. You use Gripset, not Bostik. You're a quality waterproofer. But going back to that comment about the PU membrane, it's the nature of it. And MS, you can't bond cementitious directly to MS. Now, there may be membranes that are out in the market. They might be coming through from overseas, wherever, but don't fall into that trap. And the other thing is you need the substrate, the surface, to be able to handle that. Now, I've got a couple of questions here. John's saying the biggest problem with substrates is they never have fall and yet still continue to waterproof. John, I'm going to come back to that in a moment. It's a good question, but there's one here about the polyurethane. What would be the best system on an FC sheet level 1 of a building? We feel more comfortable with solvent-based poly. Is there an alternative that has high elasticity as a solvent-based membrane? Okay. These are great questions, guys, and it's good that you're raising them. We've got this romance in this country about high elastic membranes. Why do you need a high elastic membrane like a PU sealant on an FC sheet? And I'm assuming this is a floor. About in terms of needing that high elasticity. The tension and the membrane stress is at the wall floor junctions or at a joint. Now, FC sheet you may have the joints where they meet, but there are really good water-based systems on the market that are elastic enough. But I'll tell you even more. There's really good cementitious membranes, class 2, that I would still use on an FC sheet. Or there are sheet membranes that, like our BRWPF, you can bond directly to it, or you've got our express lay system directly to the FC sheet, much more high strength than a solvent-based system. And the strength of the membrane is underplayed in this country. We've got this romance with elasticity and elongation, like a bunch of guys at a bar talking about who's got the longest one. It's not about how long your membrane can stretch. It's about how well it bonds and how much strength there is in the membrane. And tensile strength is so important, and you won't match that compared to a sheet system. So FC sheet, guys, Hoxland, I think it was, asked the question, you don't need a solvent-based membrane for that. You know, solvent-based membranes for wet areas, I'm not a fan of, for the reasons I mentioned before about the adhesion issue. But there's also the health issue on that one as well. The most important thing is that you need a membrane that bonds to the substrate, but more importantly, works with what's going on top of it. And they all need to work together. Like I've said before, membranes are like the hamburger patty in the sandwich, in the burger. It's sandwiched between the substrate and the topping, and that needs to all work together. And the thing is, we've got these systems that just are not happening in terms of trying to overcome these chemical tests, because that's really PU systems pass all the chemical bleaches, but nothing bonds them. And we're literally the only country where we see this. In Europe, I don't see those membranes, or in the North American market, used where there's direct stick tiling on top. Johnny now has said, John, the biggest problem with substrates is they never have fall and yet still continue to be waterproof. So true, John. And the issue is that if that is the case, if you've inherited that, then you should go with the under and over system. But again, educate the builder. But if you enforce the under and over, you might find they start to then create them with falls, because then they've got to waterproof it twice. If it's not laid to fall and there's no room, then you need to not do the job, because then you're going to inherit that. And we've seen that. I know, John, up in Queensland, we've seen a couple of cement sheet systems where cement sheet constructions where they were flat or even falling back to the building, and then they wanted a direct stick system. They wanted a membrane that could be immersible, but that's not the issue. The tiling system and the structure needs to drain water away. Question from All Tiles again. Some builders always tend to ask me in bathrooms, they seem to think the whole floor doesn't need to be membrane because it's concrete. Thoughts? Look, we've been talking about, and I mean, whatever the subject, even on ground level. I'm hoping that when the standard gets updated, and we're expecting 3740 next year to come through, a wet area should be, I always believe that if there's a shower alcove in there, the whole bathroom floor should be waterproofed. You're going to say, well, you're a manufacturer, you want to sell more membrane. Yeah, I want to sell more membrane, but I also want to make sure that every client walks away with that bathroom knowing it's been protected. Now, over the life of a building, the cost of waterproofing the whole floor compared to just a shower alcove it doesn't even come into 0.001%. That cost on the whole cost of the building over generational value, 10, 20-year-old home or building or apartment block. So even on concrete, the whole floor should be waterproofed. Talk about capillary action with your clients. Explain to them what happens to water outside where the membrane ends. If you terminate the membrane outside the shower alcove, there could be a vanity, there's a bath. If water gets out there, it's still got to go somewhere. And it is peanuts. Thanks, Hoxland. It's so important. So this is why you should encourage waterproofing the whole alcove, the whole bathroom floor. In commercial constructions, we see a lot when it's a disabled access because they treat the whole bathroom as a shower, but it should always tank the whole floor. SA Renovations has said good practice the whole floor, definitely. Barley bathrooms. My opinion is use a sheet membrane so it's a complete floor. No worries if it lifts the floor is at one. And that's a great comment. And that's why we've got things like Express Lay. We're talking about it today with my team around the country. The feedback we were getting from the market on those guys using that, not just about the speed, but the confidence they've got in the durability of it, how thin it is, and also the fact that it acts as that decoupling system, protects that tiled floor. Tim's confirmed that 3740 is nearly at public comment stage. That'd be fantastic. And hopefully we get people in the industry getting to comment on that. What do we got here? Nook Constructions. 80% of building failure is water ingress and damage. So it's important. So I'm assuming, Nook, that you're saying that it should be the whole floor, and why not? Tank it. Where there's going to be water, waterproof the whole thing. And like I said, the cost is peanuts. Why builders and clients want to think that that's where their saving is? There's total bullshit. Your saving is in the second fix things, with things that are decorative. But this is going to be sandwiched for the life of that tile bed. Make it work. I mean, in the average life of a home or building, it's not like you pull up tile floors as a preference every few years. It's there for decades. That then becomes insignificant for another 3 or 4 square meters of area outside a shower alcove. Tank it all, definitely. Okay, tank is the word. Should you prime between waterproofing coats? I'm going to hold on there for a second. That really depends on the manufacturer's recommendations, Kevin. With our system Gripset 38FC, between coats, no, you don't. However, if you had left the membrane for a while and then had to come back to give it a second or third coat later, then our recommendation is you should, because it's been exposed to dust and other conditions. But generally with a normal waterproofing application, that's not required. Karen Donors Building. We waterproof the whole floor for concrete floors. Peace of mind for myself as the builder, even though I do the waterproofing myself. Doesn't cost much to do it at all. Thank you, Karen Donors. And that's great advice. And that's coming from a builder. And they're the sorts of builders that you want to be doing. I'm guessing that he's doing the waterproofing himself because he's been let down potentially before and making sure of it. But there are many builders out there that want that sort of leadership from the waterproofers out there or the tiler to encourage to be done right. So thanks for that feedback. All tiles, waiting for screeds to dry in a shower base costs a lot of time. Alternative, what's the best way of knowing the screed is 100% dry? All right, let's go through this first. So if you are in a shower alcove, and I'm only going to talk about our systems here because even though I'd like to generalize about some other products out there and that they are similar, if you've got a screed that's on a shower base and that shower base doesn't have a membrane underneath it, then our membranes, such as the Gripset 38FC, the P39, the Express Lay, and the BRW PF can be bonded to a damp screed. Correct, and our Gripset 2P. Because the moisture, the minimal amount of moisture, a screed's not wet like concrete. Screed we refer to like mud. Okay, you hear that often from a tiler or builder on site. It's not has anything like the amount of water that a concrete slab has. So that amount of moisture can still absorb into the substrate below. Now you can't go on the screed while it's wet, but damp. However, if you are using a screed system where the membrane is underneath it, so let's use, for example, that you've used the Express Lay system underneath the screed or the PF sheet or even the 38, and you don't have that ability for the screed to be absorbed from below, then we still have a solution for you. It doesn't need to be 100% dry, but that's when you go with a system like our Gripset 2P because it breathes. It will allow the residual moisture in that screed to breathe through it without any compromise and no trapping of moisture. There's really no need to have a screed that's 100% dry with a wet area membrane if those conditions I explained. Below, it can absorb into the floor, or if there's a membrane below the screed, you use a membrane that's breathable. Okay? Externally, that's still the case, but you've got to make sure that externally that you would potentially probably use our E60 primer just to block out the residual moisture if the sun's going to hit the membrane. But again, with 2P, you don't need the epoxy primer because the moisture will breathe through it. So it's a big advantage and one to remember and know about. What do we got here? Okay, Barley bathrooms. The problem is failure of using water stops. Isolate the shower recess, end of story, then there's no worries for the rest of the bathroom. Water stop is important. I'm glad you've brought that up. Shandy and I have been talking about doing a great video, and he's going to be talking a lot about this next year because we've got some new additions to our range for easy sealing of water stops that actually will stop any water penetrating underneath them, following this new fixing method we've got. So stick around for next year to hear about that. John's asked a question, a waterproof membrane is at its weakest because the building footprint is never constructed correctly by the builder. Designs now outperform what a membrane can actually do. Very true, John. And the only way around that is to bring the builders into the room. And this is where I'd like to see authorities like the AIW and get the master builders, the HIA. We've got the HIA here on Monday with their technical committee talking to them about things like this, where we ensure that if it doesn't start right with the builder and the construction, then we're pissing in the wind to try and get the waterproofing done right. That's the reality. John's brought up examples of strip drains and timber floors, Hebel floors, all these things. And these are trends that, if used properly, are feasible. Not a timber floor in a bathroom, but strip drains and Hebel can be used in wet areas, but they need to be treated differently than a standard surface or a standard fixing detail. There are solutions out there. However, we need to ensure that the whole building is constructed and the trends that are changing out there are kept up to date. Hence, the comment before by Tim talking about 3740 coming out the public comment. We need to ensure that perhaps the standard is reviewed more frequently, because the trends of building out there are changing. And I've mentioned this before, even about things like prefabricated. Now, it's huge in the US, and we're seeing it here with bathroom pods. And sometimes the trends of these constructions outweigh the building code. And what do we do with it? If they can be built more cost effectively, good quality, reduce waste, why would we deny them being a trend that can be used? So all these items that you bring up, this is where instead of fighting with the builders, we need to sort of put out the olive branch and get them in the room and understand and talk with us. So true. Aqua Armour, how you going? Good to see you. Water stop angles in Queensland are now being mechanically fixed by the tiler in wet areas before waterproofing. I'm not sure, John, if that's a good or a bad thing, but we will show you shortly next year how you can avoid mechanically fixing those to stop penetrating through, and a really nice new BRW product that's going to work like a treat, and it seals it for good. Excuse the pun. What else we got out there, guys? Any more questions coming through? Who do we have? Will the screed actually dry in between, even if it's damp? I think I asked that. The screed will dry when you have eventually, because cement's got to hydrate, it's just the time. But a screed, anything cementitious will cure without absorption for the fact that there's hydration, but it depends on the amount of starting water in there. What about the Express H2O Primer? It's a fantastic product, Aqua Armour, and thanks for asking about that. It's a product that we're seeing being used more and more all the time. David, how are you? Good to see you. So those of you that don't understand how the H2O Primer works, you've just really allowed me to promote our new second edition of the Waterproof magazine. Get this, in our Tech Talk questions, there's a really good discussion point about the H2O, the E60, and our P10, our vapor barrier primers. But just quickly, Kabat, I have to go. Where can we watch the replay on this? It'll be on Instagram, IGTV, or our Facebook page. I'm still here, guys, even though Kabat's got to go. But just quickly, on H2O Primer, it's a fantastic product. It acts as a vapor barrier on a screed, but unlike E60 or P10, it does not change the nature of the screed. Hence, direct fixed tiling is an ideal one for it. It doesn't change the bonding properties to it, and it's becoming more and more popular because it's so fast to apply. JK Kohler, Lauxis grades have recommended a neutral cure silicon to set in. Okay, I think I've understood that correctly. That's a concern only if your membrane is going to come in contact with a silicon. Otherwise, you've got to find a membrane that can bond to it. Really important. Strip drain of the Gripset, would this be an issue? Gripset 38FC won't bond directly to a neutral cure silicon if it's a true silicon. That is the fact. And if it's a true silicon, they're designed that nothing should bond to them. So, happy to talk to these guys in that sealant game. There are other really good sealants out there that are paintable, like an MS. You can bond the membrane to. But hence, we have our system where we integrate our BRW that bonds directly to the plastic or metal grade with the membrane and terminates it nicely. Thanks, Simon. We'll see you next time. John. Engineered screeds are now being used for over-screed waterproofing. And that's a great thing to do, John, because their engineered screeds are normally factory manufactured. So you've got the control of the sand-cement ratio and the right additives, and they reduce efflorescence, and they've got the optimum strength. So great comment there. JK Collar, I'm glad that we helped you there. Thanks, Simon. It's not meant to be bond, hence the bond breaker. You are right about the silicon, but I think that reference to that point was more about where it comes up in contact with a strip drain and how you terminate your membrane to the strip drain if it comes in contact with the silicon there. Guys, this is fantastic engagement tonight on these comments about surfaces and substrates. We are going to have a giveaway contest, and I'll tell you about that in a moment if there's any more questions on the substrates. But I've got to better read this because my marketing team are going to get upset if I get it wrong. So our competition. So our first prize is a 15 litre of Gripset 38FC. Our second prize is a set of these timber Gripset coasters, and these are fantastic. I've been using them under my coffee cup, and when I get the Christmas break, they go under my beer at home. And the third prize is our Gripset sunshade that you can get hold of. Look at that, right? There you go. You can get one of those. So, how do you enter? Most importantly, you visit Gripset's Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube channel. The competition post will be up tonight at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, okay? And comment why you use Gripset 38FC on the competition post, and bam, you've entered, okay? I have to do the bam, apparently, Danica said. Now, we're going to be choosing the best comment and announcing that on Friday, December 18th. And I am choosing the best comment. So put some thought into it, guys. You have got to tell me, or girls, why you use Gripset 38FC. I'm looking for the best one. Already hearing that guys want those coasters. Well, all right, we'll, you never know. But join that competition, that giveaway, okay? So there's three prizes: 38FC, the coasters, the sunshade. If you check out any of our social media platforms and YouTube from 7:30 Eastern Standard tonight, 7 p.m. in Adelaide, 5:30 in the West, you'll be able to get hold of it. Now, quickly, the new gap dates. Shandy finished his last session this week. They're already getting bookings in for January. If you want to get involved, January 25th, the 27th, and 29th are the dates. If you want to find out, email GAP, G-A-P-P, at gripset.com, or send us a DM on any of our social platforms, and we'll help guide you along. Thank you, Kevin. Now, guys, we're coming up to the end of the year. So remember, these now are starting to be available at our resellers. Any of our resellers watching, if you haven't got any, make sure you message us. We'll get the box tier. This is not just a magazine with interesting articles. I've written a bit about the express lay this month. There's some great articles in here and discussion points, but it's our up-to-date product catalog at all times. So check it out. It's the sort of thing you should keep in your vehicles and at points of sale. If you're trying to check out a product, it's in here. Questions, some really good conversation starters. And how about that one? This is our gripset.com. We've had a great big year, guys. What about a shirt? I'm running low. I thought you'd gone, Cardonis. Yeah, we never know. We might get you one. Now, So look, guys, I know there's been a tough year with COVID and all the things that changed 2020, but it's still, we've just loved your support. I think the waterproofing industry and the building construction game in many ways has got closer during this time because we had time to talk a little bit more. We've had these lockdowns in some of the states that have been affected, particularly we felt it for a couple of days here, but obviously in Victoria was a big one. But most importantly, I just want to thank you all for your engagement and being supportive of Gripset. I know we've got a lot of our competitors and people that don't use our products that watch, but hey, you are more than welcome to join these forums. Great to have you involved. But more importantly, our customers, our resellers out there that support us, all our GAP guys that came through that program this year, thank you. You have helped move the industry forward, and we love you being part of that journey with us. I want to thank a couple of my people that do a great job. This isn't possible without my team, Pasky, Danica, Marcus, Marine. You guys do just such a great job putting this together and all the Suit for Good programs there. Well done. And you just make sure that I sit here with a Gripset t-shirt on and ensure that I don't give away too many prizes. So there you are. And the other thing is, did I mention Shandy? Shandy, did I thank Shandy? My partner in crime who's been in the last few episodes, done such a great job, not just the GAP program, but training others and putting out lots of fires and helping builders and waterproofers and stores with all their questions. Thank you. He's done a fantastic job, and he's got some exciting stuff that he's put together for next year. So don't forget to join in on that one. Guys, Merry Christmas to you all. I might talk to a few of you before the end of the year, but I'd like to say thank you for those of you that are celebrating the festive season. Those of you who aren't, still celebrate the fact that you are still kicking out there. You're alive. COVID hasn't broken us, and we are going to be bigger and better and stronger in the new year. So make sure that you stay safe. If you are going to have a break, enjoy it. Get off those tools, enjoy that family time down, and reflect and plan out next year. And if you want any support and advice, even leading up to that 24th of December, we're around to help you and give you any support you require. If you are working over the Christmas period, those of you that are doing some jobs, you might be involved with clients that have to get things done and you're out there grinding it. Check with your reseller about availability. We've given all those details to our customers about availability of getting product and ensuring they've got stocks during that period. We're having a small closure with our factory and we're back on the 4th. But everybody, it is just great to have you. I'm pretty sure I got everything, Danica. Competition, GAP dates, the thank yous. You're a wonderful team. Waterproofing land in Australia and New Zealand and everyone else that's watching from wherever else, thanks a lot. We'll see you in 2021. Take care. Okay, let's get this.